guys, Mrs. Cox again. Just going to read you the second part of the chapter 2 from our book above pay grade, The Boy with the Bronze Axe. So I'm going to go back a little bit today, and I should be reading pages 29 to 37. I'm going to go back a little bit just to recap where we left off on the last part of this chapter, and in order for you to be able to answer some of the questions from today's questions. If you are on this video, then underneath the video, as you scroll down that page, you will find an orange backgrounded page with some questions on for today. So, Tresckow took a handful of the limpets and swallowed them hungrily. Bruno himself ate some, and so did Stempsy. Hand the dish to the stranger again, Bruno ordered Callie. Callie did as she was bidden, but Tresckow looked doubtfully at the dish. There is not much left in it, he said, hesitating to put in his hand. Callie and Brocken owe you thanks for saving their lives. Today you will eat their share of the food. It will be your reward and their punishment for going to the rocks when I had forbidden it, Bruno said sternly. Callie hung her head. Brocken began to sniffle. The tears came into Callie's eyes. Nevertheless, she held up her bowl to Tresckow. Please, eat, she said in a low voice. I cannot. Tresccow's voice faltered. Let Callie and Brocken eat too, he begged Bruno. Bruno's face softened. Not of the limpets or crabs. I have spoken my word about that. They may eat of the meat, though, because you ask it. So today, one of the questions is for explain. Can you explain why Bruno said, not of the limpets or crabs? I have spoken my word about that. What does he mean? Have a think. What do you think he means when he says, not of the limpets or crabs? I've spoken my word about that. So when Bruno says that, he's saying that they cannot eat the limpets or crabs, because he's already said that they may not eat the limpets or crabs as a punishment for going to the rocks when they were forbidden to. But he softened, so he thought about his ruling and decided that they should have something to eat, so they would be allowed to eat the mutton that's already been put on the fire by their mum, but they're not to eat the limpets or crabs because they do need some punishment. That's our explain question answered. They may eat of the meat, though, because you ask it. Callie looked gratefully at Tresckow. Brocken cheered up at once, though he still looked regretfully at the limpets. While the crabs and eel were baking in their clay wrapper in the fire, Stempsy handed the mutton bones to everyone. Earlier she had thrust the meat among the hot stones in the fire, and though the outside was scorched, the inside meat was almost raw. That did not worry anyone. The family was used to eating its meat either raw or partly burned. They all gnawed at the bones with relish, their strong white teeth tearing the meat away. Tresckow smiled happily for the first time as he sat on a stone beside the fire. He'd been asked by this family to sit at their hearth and eat their meat. Among his people, this meant that they accepted a stranger as a friend. No doubt it would be the same in Bruno's tribe. When they had done eating, they relaxed, and Bruno seemed inclined to ask questions of Tresckow. You carry a strange axe, Tresckow. Will you let me see it? Tresckow handed it to him. Bruno examined it curiously. What kind of stone is used for the head? He asked. It is not stone nor flint, Tresckow told him. It is made out of two substances found among the rocks in a land that lies far to the south. The tin and copper are melted together in a hot fire and poured into a shape like an axe head hollowed in the sand. That is what my father told me. Did your father not make it for you? No, we have no tin or copper in our land, but my father's father came from a tribe in the south. He had 2 axes with him that he got by trading skins with men from across the sea that lie far away to the south. My father had 1 axe. He gave the other to me. Our second question today is a retrieval question. What are the 2 substances that Tenko's axe is made from. Think about what we just read. So two things were melted together. What were they? So the two substances that were used to make Tenko's axe head were tin and copper that were mixed together in order to make the metal that made the axe head. Bruno felt the edge with his thumb. It is far sharper than our stone axes. Take care of it, Tenko. While I live, I will not be parted from it, Tenko said. Stempsy drew away the clay wrappers from the fire by the long piece of bone and left them to cool. While they were waiting, Tenko looked about him. Bone rafters made the roof, and turfs had been laid upon them to thatch them, but a large hole had been left above the hearth for a chimney. Through this the smoke swirled. At one side of the hut was a stone dresser built of flat slabs resting on pillars of stone. You have beds and a dresser, just as we have, but ours are made of wood from trees that grow around our houses, he remarked to Bruno. Wood like your boat? Callie put in. Yes, we make nearly all of our things from wood. We have no trees on this island. That is why we make things of stone and bone. They will last many, many lives, and our people will use them long after us, Bruno said. Our wise man, Lokar, has told us about trees, though. To him, all the stories of our tribe have been handed down. He is our storyteller during the long winter evenings around the fire. Bruno broke away the clay covering from the crab. He broke the shell with a stone and pulled away the two large claws. These he gave to Tenko. He was about to hand Stempsy her share when there came the sound of feet along the narrow entrance to the hut. Carwin, the youth who had given Tenko the look of dislike, poked his head through the door. Bruno, I am sent to ask you to come to the meeting place. The men of Skara have gathered together. Bruno frowned. At first he stayed where he was. Then he dropped the crab into a bowl and rose to his feet. Very well, I will come. Stempsy lifted the bowl of shellfish onto the stone dresser and covered it with a piece of slate so that no rats could get at it while the family slept. Into your bed, Brocken, Stempsy said. Tonight Tenko will share the bed with you, and Callie will sleep in the little bed at the foot of mine. Tenko's eyes were already closing and his head was nodding. He had been so long without much sleep, and he was exhausted by his battle with the sea. He willingly stretched himself on the springy bed of heather and bracken. Brocken climbed in beside him, and Stempsy stretched soft sheepskins over them. Tenko was still clutching the two large crab claws in his left hand. Before he slept, he gave them to Brocken. Wait till all is quiet, and then give one of them to Callie. But father, Brocken began. Shh! The crab claws are mine now. Your father gave them to me, so I can do as I wish with them. Eat one yourself, and there is one for Callie. Soon Tenko was fast asleep, but his right hand still clutched his bronze axe, which lay among the heather between him and Brocken. Stempsy swept the hearth with a brush of bracken and laid fresh peats on the fire so that it would smoulder away till morning. The new peats threw a black shadow over the hut and its occupants. Stempsy too went to her bed. There was no knowing when Bruno might return. Sometimes the men talked long into the night. Soon she too fell into a doze. Brocken stayed awake, sucking and nibbling at the crab claw, rolling the meat over in his mouth. Across on the other side of the fire hearth, Callie stirred restlessly in the smaller bed. "Sss, Callie," Brocken hissed. "What is it?" Callie whispered back. "Catch! It's from Tenko." The second crab claw whirled through the air above the fire and into Callie's bed. She felt around till she found it. When she discovered what it was, she gave a little exclamation of delight. Soon she too was busy pushing her tongue into the crevices of the claw. She looked gratefully in Tenko's direction, but he was drenched in sleep. Soon Callie's eyes closed too, but not before she had hidden the claw among the heather of the bed. It was now a treasured possession. Only Brocken stayed awake beside Tenko. his bright eyes gleaming when an occasional flicker of firelight caught them. In the centre of a group of stone huts was a paved space open to the sky. To it 4 passages led from all of the stone huts that made the village of Skara. This was the meeting place, where the men of the village gathered to decide matters which affected them all. When Bruno got there, he found the other men awaiting him. In the place of honour was Lokar, with his long white beard, the wise old man of the tribe. Lokar sat on a large stone slab, but the other men sat cross-legged on the ground. Lokar looked up when Bruno joined them, but said nothing. The evening light was fading, but they could still see each other as the meeting place was open to the sky. Bruno took his place in the circle. "Why have you all met here?" he asked. "I did not call you." It was Bruno's right as the head of the tribe to call the men to a meeting. "No, Bruno, you did not call us," a man called Tresckow replied. "But I spoke to Lokar, and he agreed that it was wise that we should meet and talk together." Lokar inclined his head. "What have we to talk about that calls for all the men of the village to sit here?" Bruno asked in a haughty voice. That's our third question. A vocabulary question. Bruno asked in a haughty voice. What does the word haughty mean? What have we to talk about that calls for all of the men of the village to sit here? Bruno asked in a haughty voice. What does haughty mean? So, haughty means in an arrogant or superior voice. He's the head of the tribe, and he thinks he should be the one calling everyone to meeting. What on earth must they have to talk about that they think is so important that he didn't think was important enough to call a meeting? That's what he's thinking. Tresckow spoke up. "It is about the stranger who came here today from out of the sea. Surely that is a matter for us all." "Why should it be? I have taken him into my house," Bruno was beginning hotly when Lokar interrupted him in a quiet voice. "You have taken him into your house, Bruno, and it is a law of our tribe that you must answer for him. Lokar speaks the truth. You have had time to talk with the lad. What do you know of him? Is he a spirit from the sea, or is he a man like ourselves?" Tresckow asked. Bruno looked at him contemptuously. "What do you fear? He's just a boy like your son Carwin, though not so old." "Where did he come from?" Tresckow demanded. "He came over from the sea, from a great land far to the south. Lokar knows where there is such a land." Lokar nodded. "Yes, all the old tales of our tribe tell us there is a land beyond the noonday sun. Long ago our people came from it in boats made from trees, like that boat the lad came in today." There was silence for a minute. Then Tresckow spoke again. "This boy might have been sent to spy out our land. When he has learned all about us, he will go back and bring mighty warriors to fight us." Bruno threw his head back and laughed. "Ha! It is you that should be telling us tales, Tresckow, not Lokar. The lad is harmless. He was blown over by the sea by a storm." "Why then should he come armed, carrying an axe with a shining head such as we have never seen before?" Tresckow asked. "For all we know, there might be magic in the axe. He could bewitch us all with it." "You speak stupidly," Bruno said briskly. "I asked Tresckow about it. He told me there is a way of making such axes out of strange material found among the rocks, but he has never seen it done. His father got the 2 axes from a man in a tribe far to the south." "Has he given you the axe?" Tresckow asked. "No, I have not asked him for it." Tresckow gave a sneering laugh. "Ha! Listen, Tresckow," Bruno said hotly. "That boy saved the lives of my children. Why should I reward him by taking the axe away from him? We all give axes to our sons as soon as they are old enough to handle them. Tresckow had his from his father, who perished in a battle." No one noticed Carwin slip away from the outer circle of the youths gathered in the shadow listening. Bruno and Tresckow glowered at each other. It would be better if Bruno took the axe and got rid of the lad. He could turn him adrift in his boat, Tresckow said. His boat? You are foolish, Tresckow. That boat is bigger and stronger than any of ours. If he becomes one of our tribe, his boat will be useful to us. Then let us take the boat, Tresckow said. A murmur of argument ran around the circle of men, but Lokar held up his hand. Bruno cannot reward good by evil. That is against our law. But he can ask Tresckow for the use of his boat if the lad becomes one of our tribe. That I will do, Bruno agreed. And the axe? What about the axe? Tresckow asked. It is a better weapon than any of ours. It would not do for the youth to use it against us. Bruno must give us his word that he will take the axe from Tresckow if he threatens any of us with it, Lokar decided. If Tresckow lifts the axe against any of us, it shall be taken from him, even if I have to use it against him myself, Bruno promised. I will speak for him as for one of my own family. While the dispute was going on, Carwin crept along the main passage, the roofed street of the little stone village, and into the narrow passage that led to Bruno's house. At night, the openings to these passages were closed by slabs of stone, held in place by 2 stone bars, which rested in sockets in the inner walls. Tonight, though, the slabs were not in place, as the men were all at the meeting place. Carwin reached the narrow paved passage into Bruno's house. Here he paused and listened. He could hear the deep breathing of the sleepers. Cat-like, he crouched on all fours and crept along the low passage. He entered the hut near the small bed where Callie was asleep. She did not stir. There was a faint glow from the peat fire on the hearth. It was enough to enable Carwin to see and be seen. Brocken was still wide awake and sucking at his crab claw. He watched Carwin tiptoe past the hearth. What did he want? Why would he be creeping around like that? Brocken half closed his eyes and feigned to be asleep. Carwin stood still by Brocken and Tresccow's bed for a long time. Then he slipped a hand into the bed and began to feel among the heather. In a flash, Brocken knew what he was doing. He was after the axe. It lay between him and Tresckow. He pretended to stir as if he was asleep, and Carwin drew back a few steps. Brocken turned to face outward, but he felt with his hand behind him till he gripped the wooden haft of the axe. Then Brocken waited, eyes closed, breathing as if he were asleep. Carwin drew nearer again and began to feel with his hands along the foot of the bed. The axe was not there. He tried the head of the bed next, keeping his hands away from Tresccow's face. Not there either. Then it must lie on the one side of the other of the sleeping Tresckow. Carwin leaned over the boys. Brocken could bear it no longer. With a shriek, he sat up with the axe in his hand and brought it down on Carwin's arm. The blood spurted. Carwin gave a yell and jumped back. Tresckow was instantly awake. Like an animal at the approach of danger, he leapt out of bed. Carwin made for the passage, but Tresckow was too quick and he grabbed him. Callie was suddenly wide awake too. She rushed over to the fire and impaled a glowing peat in the end of a long bone used for a poker. The peat burst into flame as she thrust it into almost Carwin's face. Carwin drew hurriedly back. "So it's you, Carwin," Callie exclaimed. Stempsy was now out of her bed too. "What are you doing here, Carwin? Creeping in like a thief." "He was stealing Tresccow's axe," Brocken shouted. In a quick, writhing movement, Carwin slipped from Tresccow's grasp. Terrified, he bumped his way along the narrow passage. Tresckow seized the axe from Brocken and ran after him. Carwin had the advantage of Tresckow because he knew the way. With Tresckow at his heels, he emerged into the wider passage and fled along to the meeting place. There he burst into the astonished circle of men, with Tresckow hot behind him, flourishing his bronze axe. After both of them, Callie and Brocken came running too. The men leapt to their feet. Carwin dashed to Tresckow and hid behind him, blood dripping from the gash in his arm. There was shouting and confusion. Bruno seized Tresccow's upraised arm and swung him about. "What is all this?" he demanded. He tried to steal my axe, Tresckow accused Carwin. He has struck my son with the axe. Look at this cut on his arm, Tresckow cried. Now you must keep your word, Bruno, and take the axe from him and cast the stranger into the sea. I did not strike him. No one shall take my axe from me, Tresckow declared fiercely, clutching his axe even more tightly. How did Carwin come by this cut on his arm then? Tresckow shouted. I struck him. Brocken pushed his way through the circle of men and to the centre of the ring. I hit Carwin with Tresccow's axe. I do not believe it, Tresckow cried. It is true, Callie said. I saw Brocken with the axe in his hand. He caught Carwin when he tried to steal it. Tresckow was furious. No woman-child has the right to speak at our meetings. Turn her away. Be silent, every one of you. Lockhart had mounted on his stone and stood with upraised hand, a tall, commanding figure. Let the children speak. You first, Brocken. I was awake and I saw Carwin creep into our hut like a shadow. I pretended to be asleep. When he felt about in the heather of our bed, I knew he was searching for Tresccow's axe. I had my hand on the axe and I brought it down on his arm. And you, Callie? I snatched a peat from the fire, and by its light I saw Tresckow grappling with Carwin and Brocken, shaking the axe. The stranger struck me! Tresckow struck me! Carwin yelled. Callie turned on him. That is a lie. You are a liar as well as a thief, Carwin. If Tresckow had struck you with the axe, he would have severed your arm from your body. We will prove Callie's words, Lockhart intervened. Here is a leg of a sheep. I meant to cook it for my meal. Put it on this stone slab. Now, take the axe, Brocken, and strike with it. You are to use all of your strength. Brocken lifted the axe and brought it down with all the power of his 6-year-old arms. A deep gash appeared in the leg, but that was all. Now, you, Tresckow. Tresckow lifted the axe above his head, poised it and swung it with all his strength. It cut through the flesh and into the bone with a sharp crack, and the bone lay severed in two. A gasp went up from the circle of men. You have your answer, Tresckow and Carwin, Lockhart told them. Callie and Brocken have spoken the truth. My son has been wounded. There is a law in our tribe that blood shall be answered by blood, Tresckow cried wildly. Brocken shall answer for this. Carwin shall strike at him with the axe. There was a sudden silence among the men. They knew this was the law of their tribe. Bruno looked at Brocken, so very pale and so very small, standing with clenched fists and his mouth tightly pursed. Our law also says that one of a family can take the punishment for another. I will take the punishment for my son. He is too small, Bruno declared. Tresckow sprang into the centre of the ring. What Brocken did to Carwin was for me. Therefore, I will answer with my blood in Brocken's place. He thrust the axe into Carwin's hand. Go on, strike me. Wait! Lockhart strode into the ring. You are to strike Tresckow no harder than Brocken struck you. If you wound him more deeply, then you must answer for it, Carwin. I will not. Carwin began backing away. Your father has claimed your right by the law of our tribe. You must strike a blow, Lockhart insisted. Go on, strike, Tresckow challenged him. Carwin aimed a feeble, half-hearted blow at Tresckow, who stood as still as stone to receive it. The axe glanced off his arm, leaving only a scratch, which bled a little. That is enough. The law has been kept, Lockhart decreed. Carwin threw the axe into the centre of the ring. Tresckow picked it up. His voice rang out challengingly. By Carwin's blow, I have become a brother to Brocken. I take Bruno as my father, and his family is my family. Tresckow looked straight at Tresckow. Whoever attacks them attacks me, for I will fight if the need arises. Tresckow mumbled in his beard, some words that no one could hear. Carwin hung his head and was silent. Lockhart spoke again. The law has been fulfilled. Tresckow is now one of the tribe of Skara. Let there be peace now, and go you all to your huts. chapter 3 next, which I think Miss Hill is going to be reading to you, of The Boy with the Bronze Axe. Hope you enjoyed that, and hope that you enjoy the next chapter too.